What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. We're getting back into some more head coach breakdowns, and today we have Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. And this was an intriguing deep dive. Up front, I'll be straightforward with you guys here. I liked him a lot less than I expected, but I think that's more so just due to the caliber of other coaches ahead of him, whether that's more years in the league, being a former head coach, having more OC experience, etc. And we'll kind of dive into it here as we, get into the background, history, scheme, etc. But just something to keep at the forethought, right? He's definitely on the back end for me, but I wouldn't say it would be a bad hire, right? You can convince me that there's some good that will come out of it, but this isn't a guy that I would look at if the news came across tomorrow and say I'm extremely confident in. I would say it's definitely an improvement over what we've had, but to be determined. With that said, though, Joe Brady is a guy that the NFL has been intrigued with since LSU. Many people thought he would be a head coach by this point already. He's 35 years old, so if you think prior to him getting that Panthers opportunity that teams were expecting him maybe by 32, 33 to be a head coach, one of the youngest in the league, if he would have been able to accomplish that, speaks a lot about how the NFL at large views Joe Brady here. Now, speaking of his tenure, I know things didn't go particularly well in his favor, but let's go along his pathway, and then we'll kind of get into my thoughts about some of the bumps and bruises he's had along the way. But he started off with William and Mary as a linebacker coach before going to Penn State as a graduate assistant. We now know him from his LSU days, right, as the pass game coordinator / wide receiver coach. He won the Broyles Award as college football's top assistant while he was there after just putting on an absolute clinic, helping Joe Burrow become the number one overall pick and Jamar Chase, arguably a candidate for the number one pick as well. And obviously we've seen how that tandem has worked out in the NFL. That was parlayed into a job with the Saints as an offensive assistant coach. He then moves into his offensive coordinator role with the Panthers before being let go by Matt Rule. And then he's now currently with the Bills starting as their quarterback coach, moving into his current role as an offensive coordinator. So when you look at the lineage, who he's been under the tutelage of as he's went through these ranks, Ed Orgeron, Matt Rule, Sean Payton, James Franklin, kind of being the top names that come to mind here. Now, you have to really start during his tenure with the Panthers, which I think is what a lot of people are going to focus on if it comes to any negatives, any concerns that happen there, right? Now, he obviously failed during that first offensive coordinator stint. If I recall, I don't think he made it through the first year just to see Matt Rule get fired the following year after him, but he still had some successes there, right? For the weapons that he didn't necessarily have to run the kind of scheme he truly wanted, in which I still actually applauded him a lot for being able to adapt. But he still produced 4 players that were able to amass over 1,000 scrimmage yards during his time there. And part of this was getting into the scheme, right? Now, he likes to stretch the field vertically, which is not something that the team was capable of, right? And not because they didn't necessarily have the skill position players. They had Curtis Samuel, I want to say, over there at the time, and then they picked up Robbie Chosen, who we know fairly well. So they had a couple of guys that ran. CMC was still there at the time. A couple of guys that had 4.5 or below speed. So getting guys down the field wasn't necessarily the problem. It was more so looking at quarterback Teddy Bridgewater and what he was comfortable and reliable enough in order to do. So he adapted, right? Instead of stretching it vertically, he said, we will change things up and we will stretch the field horizontally in order to try to open some things up. And it just never really worked out well. He wasn't able to get it firing on all cylinders, right? I think the first month or so of games, though, the first 4 or 5 games that he may have had, the offense looked potent enough, right? Defenses were just able to catch up to what he was doing pretty quickly and limit what they were able to get done. They had trouble getting playmakers the ball consistently as a common theme for him being outed. And then scheming them open from week to week became an ongoing challenge as well. And these were thoughts that I dug up somewhere, and I want to say they came from Matt Rule, but it may have just been kind of organizational announcement as well. But those are the two prevailing thoughts for what ultimately led to his demise with the Panthers. So he took that away, right? He was able to get a job with the Saints pretty quickly. And Sean Payton, as we've seen with the likes of the drama we've had between him and Nathaniel Hackett, he has no concerns about voicing his opinions when it comes to guys. So if Joe Brady was really no good, even though we're just talking about him being an offensive assistant, I don't think he would have added him whatsoever to try to, bring him in, groom him, pick his brain, etc. So from that standpoint of things, I look at Joe Brady as a guy that's on the rise and not necessarily a guy that is ready for that role, to be exact, right? If I'm looking at an OC, I want him to, nobody's perfect, right? But at least for the most part, overwhelmingly in a bunch of categories, I would like to see him have excelled. That hasn't been the case, but you can argue that some dysfunction with the Panthers was a huge cause of that as well. Now, he did have head coach interviews throughout this entire time, struggles and not, right? 2021 with the Chargers, the Eagles, the Falcons. He actually came to the Jets as well, from what I recall, and then the Texans. And then he actually got an interview with the Falcons again last year, I believe, around January. But he's been able to turn things around, which is why we're talking about him as a potential candidate again, because with the Bills, his first year there, coming in as a quarterback coach, watching Ken Dorsey get fired, he steps in as interim OC, and immediately you see a different style of offense for Josh Allen, and one that got people really excited because Josh Allen was literally the entire offense. He was throwing the ball, he was running the ball, generally leading many weeks the team in rushing, and really almost all the end points were getting tallied up by Josh Allen. Joe was able to create a running game, establish a form of support for Josh Allen. So not only is he not getting as much wear and tear, they're also taking advantage of some of these guys that they picked up. And by that virtue, it also helped eliminate the need for Josh Allen to press, which helped his interception ratio drop pretty significantly. And so he ended up being a he had him, I want to say he was in contention for MVP last year as well. He's definitely in contention for MVP this year, especially after them being able to knock off the undefeated Chiefs during the regular season. Was that maybe a week or two ago now by the time you guys are checking this out. So there's been a lot to good to know, right? If you want to point out some of the primary stats that really speak to how well they've been able to do, they're third in scoring right now, 29.1 points per game. They had a 5-week stretch where they were scoring at least 30 points. When you take a look at the Jets in comparison, for example, how excited were we to see, I want to say between like maybe weeks 3 and 5, where we had back-to-back games with multiple touchdowns, right? And we're still maybe getting to 20, 21 points. So 5 weeks of 30 plus is insane. 8-2 start, which is the best team record since 1993 for the Bills. And then specific to how Joe Brady acclimates players into his scheme and not his scheme into players is the fact that he leads the league in the usage of a sixth offensive line member with at a ratio of 15.35% of their offensive snaps. And so they've been able to, again, use that to their advantage to get guys like James Cook going, get guys like Ty Johnson going. I want to say Devin Singletary is still over there, right? But they definitely use their full running back stable. They plan on being pretty deep there for a reason, and they found a role for everybody. And then part of what makes him really, really good as a candidate this year is that it doesn't matter how defenses have tried to game plan for him. Obviously, with Josh Allen being a special talent, that helps. But still, for a run game that has been the Achilles heel of the Bills for a long, long time, The Bills currently have the highest rate of seeing 8-man boxes in the NFL, and they still have a tremendous, I don't want to say tremendous, but they have a successful enough run game, right? I believe they're maybe 15th in the NFL in terms of the run game being effective, probably from a rushing yards perspective, but nonetheless, they're about average to maybe slightly above average in that capacity, considering they're seeing a ton of the same stuff that we've been seeing to force teams to throw year in and year out, right? So I love all of that. Now, when we look at what's happened in terms of the global stuff for him, right? I want to take a look at his scheme a little bit and chat about it. Running back involvement is huge. As we talked about, he definitely gets all of his guys in the mix. James Cook, Devin Singletary, if that's the correct name I'm thinking about. No, Ray Davis is it. James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, all of these guys are involved. They're factors on every week. And for any team that goes in, not accounting for those guys, they make them pay. You've seen the weeks where Ty Johnson has had a strong game through the air. You've seen or he's been able to hit the hole and he has speed to break off a huge play. Ray Davis, more of a scat back type guy. You've seen him come in and, many people thought that if there was any injury to the likes of James Cook, Ray Davis looks like a starting guy already. And then obviously with James Cook, he broke out last year. I think he quietly had over 1,300 scrimmage yards. And he's looking to try to eclipse that this year as well and doing pretty effectively at it. I love it, right? Because most teams aren't built for that workhorse type situation anymore. And so to know that you have a guy that can game plan for each and every one of these guys and it's effective more often than not is huge. He's also spreading the wealth, right? So the mantra, the theme for Joe Brady here when it comes to the Bills, and maybe this is just an aspect of how the team has been built, right? When you take a look at the steps back with Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs being let go, everybody has bought into the everybody eats mentality, right? And that's exactly what he calls it. Everybody eats. This is one of those scenarios where I remember chatting about this back when I was doing the Jets Flight podcast with my boys Gunny and Gino. Would you rather have 6 or 7 guys that can all get 5, 6, 700 yards? Or do you want that guy that can go for 13, 14, 1,500 yards and then everybody else is doing 400 or less, right? In the long term, you're probably better off with the 6 or 7, 800 plus guys. And that looks to be the way the Bills have re-envisioned themselves after Stephon Diggs left, after Gabe Davis left, to where you're seeing all these guys. And a huge piece to keep in mind is the only receiver in that room at the start of this year that caught a ball from Josh Allen by the time they let go of everybody was Khalil Shakir. And he's not taking the league by storm, no disrespect to him. But he's not a top tier name. He's not one of those guys that many people looked at and said, okay, he's a, potential number one type guy. So I really, really like the job he's done getting every one of these players ready to step up on any given week. Spread concepts tend to be a pretty big part of what he wants to do again, as he's mentioned this a few times. He wants to force the defense to defend every blade of grass. So he loves being able to get guys spread out, open up, attack the middle of the field, which is something we haven't seen a ton with the New York Jets. And he does that out of things like trips formation, out of empty formations, and then just his use of the downhill run game is it's very impressive. I look at the offensive line and what they've been able to do. It's pretty much akin to what I think the New York Jets want to do this year, right? Where you can look at the league and say, hey, these cornerbacks, these safeties, these linebackers, they're getting smaller. If you can get past the defensive line or tie them up, you have a pretty solid chance of being able to go out there and have a strong run game. You've seen it with us for, Braylon Allen having a couple weeks of pretty solid success. And you see it with the Bills more often than not. So it doesn't matter that they have a 230-plus pound guy. You're not trying to tilt the ball. the offensive line gets after the defense and they can get to the second level pretty effective. But ultimately, they can put a hat on a hat and they can go out there and dominate matchups. And I love all of it. So just something to keep in mind in terms of what we could see with him stepping in. Now, he's currently the betting favorite to become the Saints head coach, which is interesting to me. It kind of makes sense on paper, right? A return to Louisiana where, he helped LSU go undefeated and win a championship. They would be familiar with him, at least from top down to some degree, with him being there previously under Sean Payton. And then Cincy is the other one. I think that's a little bit more underrated and depends on what they want to do with Zach Taylor there. But obviously, he's had a tremendous amount of success with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They're still there. Maybe him being there also smooths over the contract issue for Jamar Chase as well. It really helps shift that offense into another gear. We'll see how it plays out. It just feels like he's destined to kind of be somewhere else, in my opinion, right now. But from operating the most prolific offense in college football history to operating one of the most effective offenses with Josh Allen being a huge gunslinger here, there's a lot to really like and appreciate in Joe Brady's game. One of the few things here, last nugget that I'll leave you guys with while we wrap up here is in terms of how he's a pretty inclusive guy is what ultimately I want to say, right? I see that he had offensive player only meetings, which helps get player buy-in, right? Apparently, the Bills do a lot of back and forth between players and the head coach, whether it's texting, whether it's official meetings or not, where the players are telling Joe Brady what they really like to run, what they've seen look and be really effective and successful in practice, and how they want to implement that on game day. And Joe Brady is putting enough trust in these guys to say, I'll run these plays as long as they're actually working. Otherwise, we're going to do it my way. And I think it's one of the better approaches to take, especially in this day and age, but overall, for, again, a team that doesn't have those top tier names anymore, is huge. It's huge. And I take a look at the fact that when guys like Khalil Shakir do go down, when you see a Keon Coleman go out there from first round pick from last year, when you see the likes of Dalton Kincaid, a top tight end from 2 years ago, I believe, that goes down, and then they can have Pro Bowl Dawson Knox step in, and he has instant success with the team again. Speaks volumes to him being able to prepare and get these guys ready. And I think from a situational football perspective, you see what you're getting, obviously, with them having their 8-2 record and being in contention to have a bye week once they get into the playoffs, right? So let me know what you guys think, though. Joe Brady, how high on him or not are you? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.